Z Yousef says half the people Boris Johnson let into Britain don't work, and never will. The official government data on migrant employment says opposite. And in this video that TikTok has just removed and banned for hate speech, the one that Nigel Farage is calling proof that Labour is silencing political opposition through the Online Safety Act. So let's do what we always do. Let's go through it and fact check it. And maybe the interesting story isn't that TikTok banned it at all.
For you, 1 in every 25 people wandering around in Britain arrived in the last 5 years.
The video is about 3.5 minutes of Yousef talking and doing his walking camera trick that he normally likes to do, rattling off to statistics. D-Day comparisons, manifesto promises broken, foreign criminals on the loose, the whole package. At the end, he reassures us that Reform government with Nigel Farage as Prime Minister will make Britain proud, prosperous and powerful. Right. So, let's see how proud and prosperous those facts actually turn out to be.
More people have turned up on our beaches uninvited over the last 7 years than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day.
Around 200,000 people have crossed the Channel in small boats since 2018. About 156,000 Allied troops landed on D-Day itself. Sounds devastating, doesn't it? Except by the end of June 1944, 3 weeks after D-Day, that figure was 850,000. The Allies didn't just stop landing after the first wave, so Yousef's comparison is 200,000 over 7 years against the first 24 hours of an operation that landed nearly 1 million troops in the space of a month. He picks a narrow window where his number wins and ignores the rest. There's something else worth saying out loud as well. He's comparing Iranian teenagers in inflatable dinghies to the soldiers who liberated Western Europe from Nazis. So I'll leave you to decide on how dignified you find that.
The Tories promised to cut immigration down to the tens of thousands in 4 consecutive manifestos and then allowed in 12 million people in their 14 years.
The Conservative pledged the tens of thousand targets in 3 manifestos, 2010, 2015 and 2017. The 2019 manifesto under Boris dropped the figure entirely and replaced it with the vague line about overall numbers will come down. The 2024 manifesto didn't bring it back either. Yousef has invented an extra manifesto, a small lie but a lie none the same, told to the camera in a video that the so-called Shadow Home Secretary of Reform UK Limited is sharing as a serious piece of communication. The 12 million is more interesting. That figure is gross immigration over 14 years, which counts every student who came for a 3-year degree and then went home as if they were still here. The actual net population increase from migration over those 14 years is somewhere in the region of 5 to 6 million. Still high, it's still a defensible thing to be angry about, but 12 million is the inflated showroom piece, and Yousef is selling that rather than the actual figure.
The Boris wave is about to inflict fiscal disaster on Britain. 4 million people who Boris let in, half of whom do not work and never will, are about to receive indefinite leave to remain.
Hold up. Half of them don't work and never will. 2 million working age people, in Yousef's telling, just sitting on British benefits. In Reform's own report, the one that the video actually exists to sell, says 4 million people arrived between January 2021 and June 2024, of whom 3.3 million came on what they call non-work visas. That phrase has done a lot of heavy lifting. A student visa is a non-work visa, and most students work part-time. A skilled worker's dependent is on a non-work visa, but the dependent can work. A Hong Kong BNO visa is a non-work visa, and the holder is allowed to work. So what does the actual employment data show? According to the Migration Observatory's analysis of the ONS figures of 2025, working-age migrant men have an employment rate of 83%. The figure for UK-born men is 77%. Migrant women come in at 72% against 73% for UK-born women. Migrants are not idle, they are outworking the natives. The Migration Advisory Committee, the government's own statutory body on this, said that last year the skilled worker visa route was, and in their words, clearly fiscally positive for the UK. They estimated the 2022-2023 cohort will contribute $47 billion to public finances over their lifetimes. Yousef's half don't work and never will is an exaggeration of the data that shows. It's the opposite of what the data shows, and it contradicts the reports his own parties published 2 months ago.
Reform will leave the ECHR, which is currently being used to give illegal migrants hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxpayer money because the Home Office confiscated their mobile phone.
The High Court ruled in 2022 that the Home Office had operated a secret, unpublished blanket policy of seizing migrants' phones, downloading the data, and in many cases never returning them. The court found that this breached the ECHR. It found that it breached the UK data protection law, and it found that the Home Office had no lawful authority for what it was doing in the first place. Leaving the ECHR, Reform's pet project, would not have made any of this legal. The policy was illegal under domestic British law too. The compensation figures 32 people have received so far and is an average payout of around £6,587 each, totalling around £210,000. Yousef says hundreds of thousands because that's the aggregate. So in this case he doesn't lie, but he just lets you assume that figure is per person. One detail he definitely doesn't mention, the unlawful policy that landed the British taxpayer with the bill that was the work of the Conservative government in 2020.
In fact, a convicted Islamist terrorist is currently running for office in Birmingham.
This is Shahid Butt, an independent candidate who stood in Sparkhill Ward in Birmingham council elections on May the 7th. Butt was convicted in Yemen in 1999. He maintains his innocence. None of this matters for our purposes because the election happened over 10 days ago. Butt got around about 450 votes and finished nowhere. He is no more currently running for office than I am. Either Reform filled this weeks ago and sat on it, or Yousef is using it deliberately stale claim because convicted Islamist terrorist comes nowhere in election makes for a worse soundbite. So that's the video, which brings us back to TikTok. Reform's case is that the removal is the Online Safety Act in action, Labour quietly leaning on a platform to take down an inconvenient opposition voice. It's a serious accusation, and it deserves some pretty serious scrutiny. TikTok is a private platform with its own published hate speech policy. Earlier this year, they took down an account of an Israeli ultranationalist influencer for hate speech violations. In January, they pulled videos by Polish far-right MP for the same reason. There's no public evidence, none, that the British government has been involved in any of these decisions, and Yousef has produced none either. What he has done is gesture at the Online Safety Act and trust that his audience won't ask him to back it up. I mean, I suppose there is an argument whether TikTok was right to pull this specific video. What you can't really do is treat the removal as proof of state censorship without first checking whether the video met TikTok's published rules, which, depending on how you read certain sections about Muslims and immigrants, it arguably did. And for me, it's finally nice to see a social media company actually pushing back against this rhetoric. Here's what this whole episode shows about Reform. They have a cosplaying Shadow Home Secretary who's never been elected for anything, who, in 3.5 minutes to camera, cannot make it to the end without misrepresenting his own party's report, inventing one manifesto, mangling the Boris Wave employment data, and using a soundbite about a candidate who lost an election a week and a half ago. And the response is, when TikTok takes the video down, isn't to defend the figures, it's to claim that the platform is doing Labour's dirty work. Tells you something. It's easier in this video to play the victim of censorship than to answer for what actually was said in it.